There's a specific kind of exhaustion that some people feel in social situations. It's not the tiredness that comes from physical activity or lack of sleep. It's the quiet drain that happens when you're standing in a room full of people, smiling politely, nodding along to conversations about the weather, weekend plans, or how busy everyone is. And inside you feel like you're suffocating. You're not rude. You're not antisocial. You're just painfully aware that the words being exchanged mean nothing. And the more you engage in these surface-level interactions, the more hollow you feel. Like you're wearing a mask that gets heavier with every "how are you?" that you answer with, "I'm good, thanks." If you've ever felt this way, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, you probably know someone who has. The person who goes quiet at parties. The one who seems distant in group settings. The one who would rather stand alone than participate in conversations that feel like scripted routines. But here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about being difficult. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about something far deeper. Something psychological. Something that has shaped the way your mind processes connection, meaning, and authenticity. So let's talk about it. Let's explore the psychology of people who can't stand small talk. Because beneath the surface of this seemingly simple preference lies a complex web of personality traits, past experiences, and neurological wiring that deserves to be understood. Small talk is designed to be safe. It's the social lubricant that helps strangers feel comfortable around each other. It fills silence. It establishes rapport. It signals that you're friendly, approachable, non-threatening. But for some people, small talk doesn't create connection. It creates distance. Because when you engage in surface-level conversation, you're essentially agreeing to stay on the surface. You're choosing predictability over authenticity. You're trading depth for comfort and for certain minds. That trade feels like a betrayal of what conversation could be. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon extensively. Research shows that people who prefer deeper conversations over small talk tend to score higher on traits like openness to experience and introspection. They're often highly sensitive to authenticity. They can sense when someone is performing rather than being real. And small talk, by its very nature, is a performance. It's a social script we've all memorized. How's the weather? Busy week? Any plans for the weekend? These aren't real questions. They're rituals. And some people can't help but feel that every time they participate in these rituals, they're moving further away from genuine human connection. Let me tell you what happens inside the mind of someone who can't stand small talk. When they're in a conversation that feels shallow, there's an internal conflict happening. Part of them knows they should just go along with it. Smile, nod, say the right things. But another part of them, the part that craves meaning, starts to shut down. It's not intentional. It's a defense mechanism. The mind recognizes that nothing of substance is being exchanged, so it stops investing energy. The result? They seem distant, distracted, maybe even cold. But they're not cold. They're exhausted. Because pretending to care about things you don't care about is draining. And when you do it repeatedly, day after day, in meetings, at family gatherings, in casual encounters, you start to lose touch with your own authentic self. This is something psychologists call emotional labor. It's the effort required to manage your emotions and expressions to meet social expectations. And for people who already feel disconnected from surface-level interactions, this labor feels unbearable. Studies in social psychology have shown that individuals who engage in frequent, inauthentic interactions report higher levels of emotional exhaustion and lower levels of life satisfaction. In other words, the more you fake it, the worse you feel. And here's the painful irony. Society tells us that being good at small talk is a valuable skill. It's how you network. It's how you make friends. It's how you fit in. But for some people, the cost of fitting in is losing themselves. Not everyone's brain is wired the same way. Some people are perfectly content with light, breezy conversations. Others need depth like they need oxygen. Neuroscience offers some insight into this. Research suggests that people who crave deeper conversations often have what's called a highly active default mode network. This is the part of the brain responsible for introspection, self-reflection, and thinking about abstract concepts. When someone with a highly active default mode network engages in small talk, their brain essentially gets bored. It's like trying to satisfy hunger with empty calories. The conversation might fill the silence, but it doesn't nourish the mind. These are the people who think about existence while others are talking about traffic. They're processing layers of meaning while someone else is listing their favorite TV shows, and they're not trying to be difficult. They just can't turn off the part of their brain that searches for significance. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as depth sensitivity. It's the tendency to seek meaning, complexity, and authenticity in all aspects of life, including conversation. And for depth-sensitive people, small talk feels like a violation of what communication should be, because to them, conversation isn't just about exchanging information. It's about connecting souls. It's about sharing perspectives. It's about exploring ideas that matter. And when that doesn't happen, they feel cheated. Not by the other person, but by the interaction itself. Here's something people rarely talk about. Those who can't stand small talk often feel incredibly lonely. Not because they don't want connection, but because the kind of connection they crave is so hard to find. Imagine walking through life, feeling like you're speaking a different language. You meet people. You try to connect. But every conversation stops at the surface. No one asks the questions you wish they would ask. No one shares the thoughts you long to hear. And slowly you start to believe that maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're too intense. Too deep, too much. This is the internalized shame that many depth-seeking people carry. They've been told, directly or indirectly, that their need for meaningful conversation is unrealistic. That they should just lighten up. That not everything has to be so serious. But here's the truth. Wanting depth isn't about being serious. It's about being alive. It's about refusing to sleepwalk through interactions. It's about honoring the fact that life is short, and every conversation is an opportunity to really see another human being. Research in existential psychology supports this. Studies show that people who engage in more substantive, meaningful conversations report higher levels of well-being and life satisfaction. They feel more connected, more understood, more alive. So when someone says they can't stand small talk, what they're really saying is, I can't stand feeling disconnected while pretending to connect. Like most psychological patterns, this one often has roots in childhood. Many people who can't stand small talk grew up in environments where authentic expression was either encouraged or necessary for survival. Maybe they had parents who valued deep thinking. Maybe they were the child who asked too many questions. Maybe they grew up feeling different and learned early on that surfacely interactions felt hollow, or perhaps the opposite happened. Maybe they grew up in a home where emotions were suppressed, where real feelings were never discussed, where everything was kept polite and shallow. And now as adults, they're allergic to that same inauthenticity. Psychologists call this an adverse reaction to emotional superficiality. It's when someone has learned through experience that staying on the surface is dangerous because it prevents real understanding and real connection. Think about it. If you grew up in a household where no one ever talked about what really mattered, where conflicts were swept under the rug, where feelings were dismissed as dramatic, you might emerge into adulthood with a desperate hunger for realness. And small talk, with all its pleasantries and politeness, might feel like the exact thing you spent your childhood trying to escape. Let's be honest. Not being good at small talk comes with consequences. In a world that values social ease, people who struggle with surface level interactions are often misunderstood. They're labeled as awkward, antisocial, arrogant, cold. But these labels miss the point entirely. Because most people who can't stand small talk aren't avoiding connection. They're avoiding disconnection. They're protecting themselves from interactions that leave them feeling more alone than before. And yet, society doesn't reward this. Networking events, office culture, family gatherings, All of these spaces are built on the foundation of small talk. If you can't engage in it comfortably, you're at a disadvantage. You might miss out on job opportunities because you didn't chat enough at the company event. You might be seen as unfriendly because you didn't participate in the group conversation. You might lose friendships because people think you're not interested, but the reality is, you are interested. You're just interested in something different. You want to know what keeps people up at night? What they dream about, what they're afraid of, what they believe in. And unfortunately, those questions don't fit into the 2-minute conversations that happen in hallways and elevators. Over time, people who can't stand small talk develop coping strategies. Some become masters of avoidance. They arrive late to events and leave early. They position themselves near exits. They bring a book or their phone as a shield. Others learn to perform. They memorize the script. They smile and nod and say the right things. But inside, they're counting the minutes until they can leave. And then there are those who rebel. They refuse to engage in small talk altogether. They respond to "How are you?" with uncomfortable honesty. They steer conversations toward topics that make others squirm. None of these strategies feel good, because all of them require you to either hide or perform. And both of those options reinforce the same painful belief that your authentic self isn't welcome in most social spaces. Psychologists call this social masking. It's when you hide parts of your personality to fit in. And research shows that chronic social masking is linked to anxiety, depression, and a weakened sense of self. In other words, pretending to enjoy small talk doesn't just feel exhausting, it's actually harmful. One of the most beautiful things about people who can't stand small talk is their ability to recognize each other. There's a moment, sometimes in the middle of a crowded room, where two depth-seeking people lock eyes. And without saying a word, they understand. These are the friendships that form quickly and deeply. Because when you finally meet someone who doesn't want to waste time on pleasantries, who wants to skip straight to the real stuff, it feels like coming home. Research on interpersonal connection shows that the quality of relationships matters far more than the quantity. People who have a few deep friendships report higher levels of happiness than those who have many shallow ones. And for people who can't stand small talk, this is everything. Because they're not trying to be liked by everyone. They're trying to be known by someone. This is why they'd rather spend an evening with one person who gets them than attend a party with 50 people who don't. It's not about being antisocial. It's about being intentional with their energy. It's worth noting that the value placed on small talk varies across cultures. In some societies, particularly in Western cultures, small talk is seen as essential. It's how you demonstrate social competence. It's how you signal friendliness. But in other cultures, silence is more acceptable. Directness is valued over pleasantries. And depth is expected even in first conversations. For people who can't stand small talk, living in a culture that demands it can feel suffocating. You're constantly swimming against the current, constantly being told that their natural way of connecting is wrong. Anthropological studies show that communication styles are deeply cultural. What's considered polite in one culture might be seen as cold in another. What's considered friendly in one place might feel invasive somewhere else. Asterisk. So when someone says they can't stand small talk, part of what they're expressing is a mismatch between their communication style and the cultural expectations around them. Asterisk for some people. The aversion to small talk goes even deeper than psychology or personality. It touches something spiritual. Because when you're someone who thinks deeply about life, who questions meaning, who feels the weight of existence, small talk can feel like a distraction from what really matters. It's not that talking about the weather is inherently bad. It's that when you're acutely aware of mortality, of impermanence, of the preciousness of time, spending that time on trivial exchanges feels almost sacrilegious, existential. Psychologists have written about this extensively. There's a concept called existential isolation, which describes the feeling that you're fundamentally alone in your experience of being alive. And for people who feel this isolation, small talk doesn't bridge the gap. It widens it. Because every surface level conversation is a reminder that most people aren't thinking about the same things you're thinking about. That most people are comfortable staying on the surface. And that you, in your depth, are walking a different path. But here's what's important to remember. If you're someone who can't stand small talk, you're not broken. You're not defective. You're not too much. You're someone who values authenticity in a world that often rewards performance. You're someone who craves meaning in a culture that celebrates distraction. You're someone who wants to really see people in a society that's obsessed with appearances. And yes, that makes life harder. It makes socializing more challenging. It makes you feel out of place sometimes, but it also makes you capable of something rare and beautiful. You can create connections that actually matter. You can have conversations that change people. You can be the person who asks the questions that no one else dares to ask. Because while others are talking about the weather, you're wondering about the storm inside someone's heart. While others are listing their weekend plans, you're exploring what it means to be alive. And that's not a flaw. That's a gift. The key isn't to force yourself to enjoy small talk. It's to find spaces where depth is welcomed. Find the people who don't need warm-up conversations. Find the environments where authenticity is valued over politeness. This might mean smaller gatherings instead of large parties. It might mean one-on-one coffee dates instead of group outings. It might mean online communities where people discuss ideas instead of events. And yes, you'll still have to navigate situations where small talk is unavoidable. Work meetings, family gatherings, casual encounters. In those moments, you can choose to see it not as a performance, but as a brief ritual that allows you to get to something deeper. Because here's the thing, small talk doesn't have to be the enemy. It can be the doorway. The question is whether you're willing to walk through it or if you'll stay stuck at the threshold. Research on conversation patterns shows that even surface-level interactions can evolve into meaningful ones if someone is willing to take the risk of going deeper. It just requires courage. The courage to ask a real question, to share a real thought, to risk being seen. At the end of the day, the psychology of people who can't stand small talk is really about one thing: the deep, aching need to be authentic. It's the need to stop performing and start existing. To stop filling silence with noise and start embracing the kind of silence that says, "I miss you and you don't have to perform for me." And if you're someone who feels this, I want you to know something. You don't owe anyone a performance. You don't have to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You don't have to pretend that shallow conversations satisfy you when they don't. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to crave depth. You're allowed to feel exhausted by interactions that don't feed your soul. And when you finally give yourself permission to honor that, something shifts. You stop apologizing for who you are. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that drain you. And you start seeking out the people and places where your depth is not just accepted, but celebrated. Because the truth is, there are others like you. People who are tired of pretending, people who long for real conversation, people who would rather sit in silence with you than engage in meaningless chatter. And when you find them, when you finally connect with someone who doesn't need you to perform, you'll understand why you could never settle for small talk. Because you were made for something deeper, something truer, something real. And that's not a burden to carry. That's a fire to protect. So protect it, honor it, and never apologize for needing more than surface-level connection. Because the world doesn't need more people who are good at small talk. It needs more people who are brave enough to go deep in you. With your inability to settle for shallow conversations, might just be one of them.